Welcome back, it's Rich, and in this episode, Rich reviews a look back at Avengers Endgame. Let's do it. Welcome back to Rich Reviews, no nonsense movie chat from the UK. And if you like what you see today, don't forget to check out my other videos and feel free to like and subscribe. So today we are looking at Avengers Endgame and how it holds up 3 years on. So yes, 3.5 years ago, released around kind of April, May of 2019. Just remind you how quick time moves on. Finished its box office run with a staggering $2.8 billion. So you could say it did pretty good, this film, did well. It made it the highest grossing movie of all time, at that time, much to the delight of myself and Marvel fans around the world. But in a bit of a questionable move, James Cameron decided to re-release Avatar. So it's now the second highest grossing film of all time because that got re-released and just made that extra 100 million and just passed it, unfortunately. But it is what it is. But what an end to the Infinity Saga, film 22 of 22, which immediately follows Avengers Infinity War's bleak ending of our heroes dying in the dust after Thanos manages to gain all the Infinity Stones, snaps his fingers and brings balance, thus wiping out half of the entire universe. The film follows our hero's struggle to come to terms with life during and after the blip, as it's now being called, this being 5 years later, and it's only when Ant-Man comes back from the quantum realm, courtesy of a nice rat, that the realisation of an opportunity involving time travel could in fact give a slim chance to rectify the situation and bring back half the life in the universe again. Nice. Both films are loosely based on various Infinity War comics and the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, but with obvious changes due to various licensing restrictions that Marvel have. So there's certain properties that aren't available, such as the X-Men, for example. Lots of characters in the comics that are not present yet. Maybe one day, though. Even that as well, in the original first Avengers post-credit scene where we first see Thanos smiling, the line mentioned around Courting of Death suggests that Marvel might have initially considered a different arc for these films and Thanos, because in the comics, Thanos collects these Infinity Stones because he's in love with death, the physical manifestation of death, and wants to destroy the universe just to impress her, which is that's what you do if you got to do that. But the cast. The Avengers films are known for their ensemble cast of heroes and villains, sharing the big screen. If you've been invested in these movies like I have from day one, the thought of having even just two heroes sharing the screen at the same time was enough to make you shake like Spider-Man's web in the wind. I mean, let's not forget the post-credit scene of Hulk when Nick Fury introduces himself to Iron Man, Tony Stark, and informs him that he's putting a team together. And then cue the trailer for the first Avengers film at the end of the first Captain America film in the post-credit scene. I mean, this was mind-blowing at the time, knowing there's going to be 6 heroes sharing the screen in one film. So the anticipation was absolutely sky high. I, for one, was genuinely excited, just couldn't believe that I ended up watching Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. I remember sat in the cinema just thinking, this is unbelievable, this is fantastic. Seeing them on the same screen in the same film at once. Something which, looking back on now, seems ridiculous following things like Endgame and pretty much every Marvel film since. But at the time, that's how it was, and that's how so many people felt. That feeling and excitement, unfortunately, can likely now not be reproduced because it's just the common thing, unless the upcoming Avengers Secret War delivers, because that could deliver potentially, that one. So virtually every character from every previous MCU film appears in one way or another in Endgame, with the usual core getting the most screen time, the rest being side story threads or appearances, but still manage to deliver and drive the narrative along nicely and have great moments. So many people do. Standouts being Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America, along with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, who is clearly the stars of this film and really of the core 22 film saga of one shape or another. It's really those two people. After Infinity War, we knew this would be a tough battle. And we knew that some would probably not make it. That was the kind of the talk on the internet, forums. But the anticipation leading up to Endgame was unlike any film I'd seen in history. And knowing actors' contracts were ending, actors were talking about wanting to do other film projects, just the age of some of the actors, because they've been investing in this for the last maybe 15 years, he started to leave it really open as to who may make it in the end and who would possibly go out in a bit of a blaze of glory. And this anticipation remained throughout the film, with points where I thought, this is it. This is where he's going to go. I can see it. For a specific person at that moment, it was intense. It was nail-biting watching it. And again, it's easy to kind of look back now and just downplay and forget about these events. But on opening night, you sat in an IMAX screen, the first showing in Sheffield, in Yorkshire, midnight. It sold out months in advance. You could hear a pin drop at some of these moments. It was intense viewing. It really was. Notable mentions to me, though, in the cast go to Cap, meeting up with himself in his past, which highlights just how much he's changed and grown with us as an audience, as well as himself. He chats to his younger self and demonstrates that ridiculous soldier following orders dialogue. But yeah, that is exactly how it sounded in the early films, but it's so funny seeing it further down the line. It just shows you how he's changed. Another notes go to Tony Stark meeting up with his dad, Howard Stark, and what follows is a great scene that helps him come to some kind of understanding and appreciation about his father, following years of never being good enough and not feeling that kind of love that he wanted from his dad. It's a beautiful moment with zero action, but for me, it really does kind of hit the right notes. I love that scene. I think it's great. Everyone in this looks to be giving 110% to every scene. And just the sheer logistics of getting all this cast and all these people together is a truly remarkable feat in itself. Not to mention how high the salaries must have been for this film. If Marvel consistently gets one thing right, it's the casting. It's always on point. I mean, look at Josh Brolin as Thanos, for example, or Bradley Cooper as Rocket. Full motion captured CGI characters, and yet you never see him that way for a second. You just see him as that character, and that's how it is. It's just perfect choices. So what worked? Well, for me, and this is my views, don't forget, the film delivered everything I wanted from a final Avengers storyline. There were so many plots and threads, and everything just seemed to come together. Story and character arcs seemed to tie up nice and finish off in the best way possible. I think it was a really tough call for the Russo brothers directing this to weave so much into just a couple of hours of runtime. It must have been a daunting task to take on, but it worked for me. It really worked. In the end, it kind of finished how it should have done. It delivered on so many levels that now looking back, it really wasn't just the ending to this film. This is to 21 before it too. And for me, I almost see the entire Infinity Saga as just one 40-hour film. This is just the last bit of it. There were many huge surprises and standout moments littered throughout. I mean, notable mentions must go to things like Fat Thor, which at the time no one expected to see. Cap lifting Thor's hammer. I mean, that was just ridiculous. Proceeding to then smash Thanos in the chin. It was totally unexpected, and that just saw millions of 40-year-old geeks cheering around the world. Have a look at some screen reactions on YouTube of different people witnessing that on opening night. It was just amazing. And Tony Stark as well being that sacrifice in the end, which makes total sense once you've seen it all. But man, the famous portal scenes, seeing all the heroes slowly coming through the portals onto the battlefield with that kind of stellar soundtrack in the background, the Avengers theme building up, it really was a monumental moment in any film. It was absolutely, absolutely tremendous. You can't emphasize enough just how grand that was. It was incredible, and it just blew me and so many people away. And it really just should have won an Oscar just for the best moment in a film ever. It was just utterly amazing. It worked because of the time and investment that Marvel put into this and all the films leading up to it. They didn't rush into a team event like DC had tried. Everything before it was carefully thought out, and they shaped the core heroes to this final chapter. And that really all starts off with Robert Downey Jr. and this kind of casting. It just makes sense. It works. It was a risk. It was perfect. You have Chris Evans as Captain America. Again, coming from being the Human Torch, I thought that's weird. But no, it worked perfectly. And then Chris Hemsworth, pretty much unknown at the time. But man, he's a perfect Thor now. Can you imagine somebody else being Thor? And then you brought in people like the Guardians of the Galaxy. Just came out of nowhere. You saw the trailer and thought, oh, that's good. And it just blew everyone away. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I mean, again, you just can't get it wrong. And then you had people like Paul Rudd that just brought that nice comedic tone as Ant-Man. Even Spider-Man, Tom Holland worked. Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. God rest his soul, but a great choice there. All coming together to create and shape these characters one after the other to produce this big chain.
very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. Conflict breeds catastrophe. The thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
So what didn't work in this final film? Well, of all the great, for me, the thing that just didn't work, ironically, the first one being one that I said before that did work, which is Fat Thor. So, although I laughed and smiled when I first saw him, I thought it was great, it was really funny, again, completely unexpected, it kind of soon started to wear a bit thin, and I hope that somehow they would have maybe slim back to normal some way, don't know how, but by the end of the film, looking like his old self. But he didn't, and he kind of became a bit of a joke then for most of the film, and that's carried on in his solo films. So, yeah, it's funny at first, but, you know, it just went on too long for me, that. And then also, again, you know, the death of Black Widow, you know, it's a great moment in itself. The kind of the struggle between her and Hawkeye, who would sacrifice himself. But it was visually the same as Gamora, in the same place, for the same reason. Everything looked identical, even the music was nearly the same. And it had just happened in literally one film before, so it kind of just took some emotion away from it, I think, in that respect. Not that she shouldn't have died, just maybe in a slightly different way. I don't know, but it was very close to the last one anyway. And then lastly, the Hulk. I was disappointed in his screen time. His action was pretty poor, and apart from his snap moment, he was almost really like a sideline character. He had no presence in the final battle, and I kind of miss the old Hulk from the early movies. You know, I like that kind of raging Hulk and someone that really kind of goes for it. And I do fear he's kind of going the way of Thor a bit and becoming a bit of a comedic presence for laugh. That just doesn't work for me, and I'm pretty sure some of the fans share the same thought. So final thoughts. Well, for me, I can forgive some of the smaller issues. Watching this now, 3.5 years later, especially considering what's released since then, this was and is still a clear 5 out of 5 film for me, and I believe it's the pinnacle of Marvel that I hope can be repeated, but I'm not so sure it'll reach the same heights ever again. So, if this were ever to come back onto the cinema, and for some reason you was one of the 2 people in the world that didn't see it on a cinema, what would you do? Would you take a mate, take a date, or stay up late? I'd take a mate. Go and watch it in IMAX if you ever get the chance and geek out the most impressive looking representation of your favourite comic book heroes. So what did you think of Endgame 3 years on? Leave a comment below, and until next time, keep smiling peeps. Thanks for watching.